It is day 249 of the second Trump administration. And tonight, Donald Trump's Department of Justice has secured an indictment of former FBI Director James Comey. Now, the charges are for obstruction and false statements, and it's tied to testimony that he gave on Capitol Hill in 2020. The arraignment for former Director Comey is set for 2 weeks from today. Now, just days ago, Trump publicly pushed his attorney general, really the people's attorney general, to go after Comey, who he sees as an enemy and has seen him as such for years. This case is based in the Eastern District of Virginia, where Donald Trump forced out the U.S. attorney after he wouldn't pursue the cases Trump wanted. Now, the president then installed White House aide Lindsey Halligan, who had zero experience as a prosecutor. A senior Justice Department official told MSNBC that career prosecutors in Virginia sent the new interim U.S. attorney a memo earlier this week. And the memo explained why they thought there wasn't enough evidence to charge Comey with a crime. But clearly that didn't stop her. Here's what Donald Trump said earlier today about the possibility of Comey being indicted.
Well, I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know. You have very professional people. Headed up by the Attorney General and Todd Blanche and Lindsey Halligan, who's very smart, good lawyer, very good lawyer. They're going to make a determination. I'm not making that determination. I think I'd be allowed to get involved if I want, but I don't really choose to do so. I can only say that Comey's a bad person. He's a sick person. I think he's a sick guy, actually. He did terrible things at the FBI. And but I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Tonight, Comey responded to the indictment in an Instagram video.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial. And keep the faith.
Trump and his team are also reacting on social media tonight. Donald Trump called the indictment Justice in America, saying, quote, "One of the worst human beings this country has ever been exposed to is James Comey, the former corrupt head of the FBI. He has been so bad for our country for so long and is now at the beginning of being held responsible for his crimes against our nation." Attorney General Pam Bondi posted, "Today's indictment reflects this Department of Justice's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American people." And the current FBI Director, Kash Patel, posted, "For far too long, previous corrupt leadership and their enablers weaponized federal law enforcement, damaging once proud institutions and severely eroding public trust." It is very hard to read those statements. Let's bring in our leadoff panel to break it down. Former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, who spent 25 years as a federal prosecutor, Carol Leonnig, MSNBC's senior investigative correspondent, and Akayla Gardner, MSNBC White House correspondent. Carol, let me just say, it's hard to read the statements because I follow the news closely, frankly, of what the president and the current officials that he has installed at the Justice Department have not only been saying, but what they have been doing since he has been back into office. Can you just break down for us what we know about how this all came together over the last couple of days and your reaction, frankly, to former FBI Director Comey's very just defiant and resolute statement that he put out on social media?
So first off, I want to emphasize something. I'm here as a reporter. I'm not here as an opinion maker, but as a reporter watching facts and gathering them, this is probably one of the most dramatic, pivotal moments in the Trump presidency. To have a person charged with a crime after a seasoned prosecutor and Trump appointee concluded the facts were insufficient to bring a righteous and careful case. But that indictment did come after Donald Trump ordered it up. A president ordering up an indictment of somebody he perceives as an enemy is a sea change in the way our country works. And that is not partisan, and that is not opinion. That is just fact. And that's the most important thing that I think needs to be said. One more element is, for days, my colleague Ken Delaney and I have been on this trail of hearing from sources that witnesses were being interviewed and material was going to be presented before a grand jury after Eric Seibert, the U.S. attorney, was essentially forced out of the U.S. attorney's office under pressure to either resign or get kicked to the curb. And so we knew a grand jury was going to be meeting, and we knew that presentations were going to be made. We were hearing, but we could not confirm that it would be today, but we knew it was going to be as early as today. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. I was about to leave the office at, 6:30, and got pings from various people saying, Comey's been indicted on 2 counts. And Comey's reaction, forgive me, you asked the question about his reaction. It reminds me of, it's very similar to what he's said in the past. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be indicted. I'm not worried because I trust our justice system. I trust our judges. I trust that facts will be weighed by the people. And he's definitely speaking as a person who does not have fear, but is deeply disappointed.
Joyce, you spent, as I noted, 25 years as a federal prosecutor. When you were nominated for your position, 2 Republican members of the United States Senate signed off to underscore your ability to do the job. What do you make of this case?
So, I think Carol is dead on the money. There's no way that we can try to rationalize what has happened here. The President of the United States called for an indictment, and he got an indictment. And now prosecutors will be in a very unusual position, because usually when you seek an indictment, you do that with a full awareness that your burden of proof at trial is guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But this indictment, it's not clear, frankly, from the indictment itself what precisely Comey is being charged with. There's speculation that it's his exchange with Ted Cruz at this Senate hearing on September 30th. But now Comey's defense lawyers will seek a bill of particulars and ask the government to clarify its charges. And there will be a process here that may or may not result in a trial. It's just not clear how far this prosecution will go.
So, Joyce, then this arraignment that has been set for October 9th, then, you are saying that it is not a foregone conclusion that will go forward. And what then comes next in terms of technical steps? You talk about a document that they are asking for, a clarification of charges.
Right. So arraignment is perfunctory. That's where the defendant has read the charges against him and enters a plea of not guilty. Judge Nachmanoff has scheduled that for the 9th. That will happen. And at that time or shortly thereafter, he'll issue some form of a scheduling order. It might be informal, simply making sure that the government is aware of its discovery obligations, which I'm sure that they are. The Eastern District of Virginia is a rocket docket, so things tend to move very quickly there. But defense lawyers will likely want to make some motions and preserve potential legal defenses that their client has before they get to the trial stage.
All right, we will be watching that piece. Akayla, let me bring you in here because I read the statements, and it is very clear, particularly from the president's statement, that he himself is celebrating this. What are you hearing from the White House this evening?
Well, it's not just the president, it's also his allies. You read the other statements from Pam Bondi, from Kash Patel. Other allies online are very much cheering this indictment. Other people want to see him arrested. It seems that Comey is going to turn himself in tomorrow, but some people wanted this to be a bigger show than what it is right now. But this is really a reminder of how much retribution and revenge has been a driving factor in the president's presidency, not only in his campaign where he really promised to go after his enemies, but even after he won, he continues to pursue this relentlessly. And you laid out that timeline of him posting that Truth Social directly to Pam Bondi and later telling reporters that he wanted her to act quickly. He's made this very clear that he wanted an urgency here, and that is something that potentially could come back to bite the prosecutors in this case, is his statement to this effect. And this is really a break from precedent that we have seen for decades now, that the White House has not been involved in Justice Department actions, and that clearly seems to be not the case tonight.
Yeah, Carol, those were changes that were made post-Watergate, frankly, in terms of the hardening, if you will, of the lines between the Justice Department and the executive branch, particularly the White House. What do we know about who could be up next on Donald Trump's list? As Akayla noted, the president, it's not a secret that he, thought a lot about retribution. He has mentioned in the past couple of days the AG of the Attorney General of New York, Tish James. He's mentioned Senator from California, Adam Schiff. Are these individuals that could potentially also see some legal activity around themselves?
I think they already are. I mean, those are, if not grand jury presentations, those are ongoing investigations in several different offices. Letitia James, I'm so glad you mentioned her, because Eric Seibert, again, the U.S. attorney, the Trump appointee chosen by President Trump, allied to his mission, Eastern District of Virginia, handling the same case docket as the Comey case, also did not see a reason to proceed with charging Letitia James with mortgage fraud based on some documentation that appeared to be entered in error and that was contradicted by other documents that she actually submitted about her home. And so that's one that's quite active. It isn't facing the same ticking clock that the James Comey one was, the statute of limitations, which was supposed to run out by next week. And hence there was some, I suppose, some urgency on the part of the president to get moving on that. Again, all of this is so foreign to most of us who've written about this Department of Justice for many, many years. To have the president felt some urgency about an indictment and some charges in a case involving statute of limitations. You asked about Schiff. There's no question in my mind that there are people who are working now inside the department at Main Justice and probably in other field offices looking for what the evidence might be there. And of course, you mentioned just randomly other people that could be in trouble. The New York Times had a good story the other day about George Soros being the subject of an investigation, Donald Trump, and more broadly, Donald Trump wants to look into everybody who might fund Democrats, which is very sprawling as a criminal predicate. I mean, I don't want to sound snarky, but, what is it exactly about funding Democrats for office that is automatically criminal? Donald Trump is trying to connect Charlie Kirk's assassination to democratically funded organizations. There is no such evidence linking his death to that. And yet this is something he's been describing as a basis for bringing a charge. Donald Trump doesn't have any prosecutorial experience. And this is not the only reason that presidents aren't supposed to be directing and advising the Department of Justice.